Tear and radiation, the Radium girls. The girls' jaws fell off, teeth fell out, bones broke, and spines shatter. Radiation poisoning had finally got to the girls. Radium was discovered by Marie Curie and her husband, Pierre Curie. Though the public thought radium was beneficial and had healing properties against the advice of the Curies. After World War I, American company, United States Radium Corporation, employed factories of women to paint glowing radium paint on watch dials. The radium paint glowed in the dark, which was perfect for soldiers in the dark. A method used to sharpen the paintbrushes made the person put them in their mouths. Thus, radium was ingested. The Radium Girls showed a frontier on how radiation can affect the human body. The Radium Girls were heavily publicized, and in World War I and World War II, they were helpful but suffered major consequences. The Radium Girls were very publicized in the news because of how shocking it was that radium was cancerous and radioactive. Soon enough, the radium craze was on. After it was observed that radium could treat cancer, many people mistakenly thought it could be used to treat other diseases as well. Radium was widely considered a miracle substance sold in pharmacies for all kinds of ailments. The public thought radium was a cure-all because during the times of war, many people of the public were looking for cures for all sorts of diseases. Due to this, a wealthy business mogul who ingested a radium beverage died from severe radiation poisoning, and the public started to look at radium differently. His side effects included a brain abscess, anemia, and necrosis. The Radiator product was sold to the public, even though the creator of it was not medically licensed. Despite that, he sold his product with little to no repercussions, ultimately leading to the death of Eben Byers. The Radium Girls helped in World War I and World War II, and also helped employ jobs for many working class, as morbid as it is. The Radium Girls helped by painting watch dials with radium paint. The US military began using it on dials in airplanes and other equipment to make it easier to see in low light conditions. Many women were employed to paint the tiny numbers using radium paint in clock and watch factories in New Jersey, Illinois, and Connecticut. There were hundreds of women employed providing jobs but also leading them to death. Radium painters in watch factories were usually working class women in their late teens and early 20s. The women were happy to get jobs working with radium, a respectable position in the early 1920s. The immediate impact of the Radium Girls' job was devastating for their health. The workplace was very unsafe for workers. No safety precautions were taken, and the women were even encouraged to lick their brushes to keep the tip pointed and prevent the paint from drying. The effects of radium on the human body include some types of cancer, particularly lung and bone cancer. Higher doses of radium have been shown to cause effects on the blood, anemia, eyes, cataracts, teeth, broken teeth, and bones, due to bone growth. Many of the women who died in the New Jersey and Illinois factories were in their 20s or 30s. They were very young, but because the radium paint was radioactive, the body mistook it for calcium and filled the bones with it, ultimately leading to weak bones, nausea, and bad effects on the brain. Some had plastic anemia, others had collapsed hips and backbones so damaged that they needed braces from the neck to the waist to stand up straight.
And one time we had one girl that even painted her teeth. And held her mouth open till it dried on there. See, it dried.
Molly Maggia began complaining of severe mouth pain. Her dentist extracted several teeth, but the wounds from those extractions never healed, and Molly's pain worsened. Her teeth began falling out on their own. During one examination, her jawbone shattered against the light touch of her dentist's hands. While the girls were dying, they were filing suits against the U.S. Radium Company, pushing for the Women and Industrial Health Reform, 1910 to 1935. In 1925, 5 of the women filed a lawsuit against the U.S. Radium Corporation, based in Orange, New Jersey. The company lawyers tried various delay tactics. They argued that because the women had left the job several years before they fell ill, the radium paint could have not caused their ailment. The judge rejected their claims, and a hearing finally took place in 1928. After the fact, a trained scientist was brought to the case and proved that the girls' breaths were toxic, thus closing the company in the 1920s. The trained scientist proved that the dangerous amount of radium caused the women themselves to be emitting radiation, shown by a gold leaf moving in a vacuum due to particles. This was also a very early type of a Geiger counter. This eventually led to the U.S. Congress passing a law that allows workers to receive compensation for occupational illness. They also changed how the Manhattan Project was developing the first nuclear bomb. The Radium Girls were not just in one location. In the 1920s, there were many factories, one in Orange, New Jersey being the most well-known. 4,000 or so workers were employed in the factories, causing many to fall ill or die. In sum, the Radium Girls was a frontier in how people treat and handle radium. The Radium Girls were a cultural phenomenon in the news and in both wars. They were helpful but had to experience several life-altering and deadly effects. Due to this event happening, new generations now know the horrors of radiation and radium. Thanks to the Radium Girls, new laws have been passed allowing workers to have compensation for their work-related diseases.